So this is California's Language Access Plan, Model Notice for Limited English Proficient Court Users, Video Remote Interpreting Pilot Project, Progress Report on Implementation of the Strategic Plan for Language Access in the California Courts. We welcome our presenters, Justice Mariano Florentino Cuellar, who's chair of our Judicial Council Language Access Plan Implementation Task Force. Welcome. Justice Terry Berniers, chair of our Judicial Council Language Access Plan, also welcome. And we also have Mr. Douglas Denton, Judicial Council Court Operations Services. Thank you. At this time, we invite Justice Cuellar to please present.
Thank you and good afternoon. Happy Friday. In January 2015, the Judicial Council adopted the Strategic Plan for Language Access in the California Courts. This roadmap really is for the creation of a statewide approach to ensure language access across the state for the 7 million limited English proficient residents and potential court users. Today, I want to focus on a simple goal. I want to tell you the story of where we are. I want to pick up exactly where I left off when I had the chance to address you about a year ago and tell you everything we've gotten done, some of the challenges we faced, how we're trying to overcome those challenges, and what we hope will come next. The report before you also contains one item which we are requesting the Judicial Council to approve, and that's a model notice for LEP court users regarding availability of language access services. The report also talks a little bit about our hope of a VRI pilot project. We're going to do some further refinements on that and hope to bring back the plan so that we can talk about it and get approval for it later on. Two ideas are at the core of all our efforts so far. The first is recognizing the broader priorities and needs that the courts have. We're in a system that needs to function. The lights need to go on. Courthouses need to stay open. Judges need what they need. That's the way we can serve the public best. So what we do in language access has to harmonize, has to fit with the priorities of the courts. By the same token, we also want to stick to the plan that the Judicial Council approved, because it's a good plan, and the plan gives us some unprecedented opportunities to take a giant leap forward on language access. It helps to see where we've been so we can get a better sense of where we're going. Not long ago, there was no language access plan. Interpreters were rarely provided in civil matters, and funding for the crucial program 4545 was largely static. We're in a different situation now. Part of it is that AB 1657 passed in 2015, codifying a priority order for covering civil proceedings with interpreters. Courts now routinely provide interpreters in many civil cases. I'm gratified to see how the progress is playing out in Northern California, Southern California, East and West, on the coast, away from the coast. You can see the growth in the 4545 fund, and shortly I'll talk about what we hope will happen in that fund and why we're happy with the governor's support. But I also want to emphasize that we have a lot of work to do because the plan is very ambitious. It's no coincidence that the plan has 75 recommendations. That's a lot of recommendations. It takes us a while to just work through the plan and make sure that everybody is aware of what these recommendations indicate. The overarching goal, though, is pretty simple. It's to develop and support a culture in which language access is considered a core court service, a crucial part of access to justice. The Chief Justice formed the Language Access Implementation Task Force in March of 2015. That's when I came to talk to you. I was appointed chair, and I'm very pleased to have Judge Manuel Covarrubias from the Superior Court of Ventura County as my vice chair. The purpose of the task force has been to listen, to learn, and then to guide and coordinate the implementation of the language access plan across the state. We have a diverse membership: trial court judges, Court of Appeal justices, court administrators, interpreters, legal service providers, educators, and community members. And I want to especially single out three groups who have been really crucial in this process: interpreters, trial court judges, and our staff. And I'm grateful to all of them for their input and their continued participation. It's a dynamic group. It works hard. We've divided the task force into 4 crucial subcommittees: budget and monitoring, technological solutions, translation, signage, and tools for courts, and language access, education, and standards. The task force has held both business meetings and community meetings, many of them right here in this room. We encourage public participation, And we encourage you to come to our next public outreach session if you want to, which is March 22nd right here. A crucial part of what we do really is listen. I alluded to this earlier, and I just want to give you a couple of examples. At every one of our meetings, we've gotten feedback, and I thank the folks who just spoke earlier today, because we try to listen. It's complex sometimes because the devil's in the details, but just to give you some flavor for the kinds of comments we've gotten. We can't do this without more funding, some folks will say, and that's entirely right. Interpreters are being provided on an as-available basis, which often means that Spanish-speaking interpreters are provided more quickly. We need clearer protocols for requesting interpreters, and court staff should be trained on LAP changes. We want the public to know what their rights are. We've been trying to respond. To give you some examples, our BCP, which we worked on with staff and with the council, reflects a recognition that however more efficient we hope to be, we're not going to be able to solve this problem without additional resources. We understand that part of what we need to do also is to survey what's going on in the trial courts. We have a model request for interpreter form that we've been working on, development of tools for courts, which I'll talk more about, involving the use of a centralized website where we get new ideas and resources for courts across the state. The key is we're engaging a whole lot with people, and the results are that we're getting support for what we're trying to do. One key example of that is our BCP request. We were very gratified that the governor included $7 million in additional funding to expand the provision of interpreter services in civil proceedings. Now, this is crucial. We do think, as we survey and learn about what courts are doing on the ground, that there are efficiencies, there are ways to work well with interpreters to make sure they get the time and the support they need, but to allocate them effectively to civil proceedings. But even with all that efficiency, it's also very clear to us that we need additional funding. We hope that this will be a game changer. We may ultimately need more, but it's a step in the right direction, and it'll help us live up to the responsibility we have and the ideals that are reflected in AB 1657. Our Budget and LAP Monitoring Committee is also focused on keeping track of those 75 recommendations, setting up a database that lets us monitor progress on the ground, and crucially has helped us lead a process of getting a survey out. We've also worked closely with the National Center for State Courts on this. Now, the survey is the kind of thing that will help us understand even better not only where there are challenges, but also what interesting things are happening that we didn't know about. And I'll give you an example. The Traffic Court Avatar in LA provides assistance in English and Spanish with the payment of traffic tickets. Over time, it's possible this could expand to even other languages. But this is one example of how we can use technology, how we can find ways of being more efficient, how we also need to focus on particular kinds of proceedings. And I'm very gratified to see that we have 49 out of 58 trial courts that have already responded as of yesterday, and we hope for even more responses. We did a separate survey for the Courts of Appeal because there are special challenges we'd like to know about there. A key part of this effort, of course, is to get very respectable judges that have a good reputation and are known across the state to do judicial education. And here we have Judge Austin, Judge Yu, who recently recorded a video. This is an example of the work that our Education and Standards Committee is doing. We've redesigned a class for judges on spoken language interpreters, and I thank Judge Yu for that. We have this new video on procedures for appointing spoken language interpreters, which is really relevant to the civil expansion. And our technology committee, as I alluded to under Justice Berniers, is working on the development of a VRI pilot project. And you got some information on that, and we hope to be back before the council soon to talk about it. One of my favorite things that we've done is to use technology to harness a lot of the wisdom that exists in the trial courts on what to do to expand language access. And this exists in the form of a language access toolkit that is available to everyone. It's a one-stop online resource for multiple audiences, for first and foremost for the folks who help us run our trial courts and for bench officers, but also for the general public. And here you see a little snapshot of it. The nice thing about it is that it's meant to expand over time. So right now we already have some nice resources for entrance and security, points of contact, model notices in language, procedures that could be used inside the courtroom, information on all that. A key challenge is making sure that 3 or 4 years from now, this thing is not a dead link. And so we're taking steps now to make sure that we have it staffed appropriately, supported appropriately, so that 2 or 3 years from now, it has even more that is useful for folks. Guiding principles for this language access toolkit can be summed up in 3 basic points. One is we want one location for language access resources, so folks don't have to be hunting and pecking on Serenus or elsewhere. Two is we want it to be easy to use, to have a practical interface. Three, we want it to start with meeting the needs of local courts, but then to scale up to include resources for multiple audiences. So we're happy with it. This does reflect some of the recommendations that we have. It's an example of how there might be 75 different recommendations, but sometimes, as with recommendations 37, 38, and 66, statewide repository of language access resources and so on, you can do multiple recommendations with one particular approach. So part of what we are also trying to do is to develop the kind of model notice for LEP court users that can help trial courts deliver on recommendation number 5, which is courts informing users about the availability of language access services at the earliest possible point of contact between court users and the court. So what you see here is the model notice. I emphasize it's a model, so it can be adjusted for local needs, it can be tweaked, and we want it to be available in multiple languages, and we hope to monitor how this plays out so that over time we can adapt it as needed. The National Center for State Courts developed several samples for review by our committee. That's how we came up with this. And we got feedback focused on readability. We want it to be plain language. Visual attractiveness, which may or may not ultimately convince you, but we think this is a little better than some other options we saw. And simplicity. And we hope that the model notice is available initially in the 8 most frequently spoken languages in California. And of course, each court will be able to adjust based on the languages they think are the most important. The Implementation Task Force approved the language for the model notice at its January 27th open meeting, and then recommended the model notice be submitted to the Judicial Council for its approval, which brought us to today. And we respectfully request your approval to the model notice to help inform court users about the availability of language access services.
Thank you, Justice Cuellar. It's a comprehensive presentation, and I enjoy the graphics that you've used as well. Thank you.
Good.
Any comments or questions or observations? I know before us we have, I believe, recommendation 1. I understand recommendation 2 is not ready for our consideration at this point. Any questions, comments, observations, or I will entertain a motion?
I'll move, Chief.
Thank you. Judge Nadler moves that we accept. The second by Judge So. Further discussion? You've been very persuasive, Justice Cuellar.
Thank you.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or noes? Matter carries unanimously. Thank you for your fine work.